Every decision that I've made in war, no matter if it was Syria, Iraq, or Ukraine, came at a cost. Every piece of gear that you carry, every call that you make, there's always a trade-off. I've made some good calls and I've made some bad ones, so I want to talk about it today. If you're a soldier going to the front line, at least in Ukraine, you're gonna be carrying at least 60 kilos of gear on you. And if you're an infantryman, where you know that you might be stuck out there for an extra week, you might be bringing closer to 70, 80 kilos of gear. And as you've seen on my channel, no matter if it was my videos or other people's videos, the most dangerous part is the info and exfil. And weight only adds on to the stress of that. And one of the choices you have to make is, how much armor am I gonna put on myself? Obviously, more armor means more protection. It means that you can protect your groin if you wear a groin protector. But if you have that groin protector on, it's going to make you a little bit less mobile. It's going to make you chafe down there, which the injury of that can last a week or two and even cause an infection.
It's normal.
Are you going to have an armored neck gaiter? Are you going to have shoulder pads? How many plates are you going to have on you? The front sappy, back sappy? Do you want side sappies? And the more gear that you have, the more cumbersome you are, it means the less chance that you're going to be able to operate on the front line, shoot down an FPV because your shoulders are so tired. So in Iraq and Syria, where our main threat was drones, but we had tunnels, the way that we did it was high mobility. We wanted to be as fast as possible. We wanted to be able to fit into the tunnels easier. Even having a helmet was almost laughed at by the Kurds because, okay, that's just more weight that you're going to have on you. You can't be as mobile. So you have to adapt to the war that you're going into. But I think Ukraine has the biggest trade-off. More mobility means you can dodge these drones. Less mobility means that you'll be protected from the bombardments, but I mean, at what cost? And the second point I want to make, kind of going on that, is heavy firepower versus lesser firepower, right? So FPVs, most effective weapon that you can do to shoot them down is a shotgun. But do you really want to bring a shotgun with you? That is another 10 pounds of weight if you're including ammunition. Do you want to have a big cumbersome M240 with you, or do you want a saw, something a little bit lesser weight? So if your position is about to get overran, what are you going to leave? You have to leave something. You're bringing in 70 kilos of gear, but you brought everything you could possibly fit in your backpack. You have all the armor on, you have the neck gaiter, you have the shoulder pads, you have an extra shotgun, night vision, you have all the Gucci stuff, but then you have to get out of there real quick because there's a whole platoon running into your position that only has 4 guys. You have to leave your stuff. You can't bring everything.
Sit down there.
Таке, блядь. Сьогодні шашлик же ще цей, типа.
This is the reality, and it's something that has to go through your mind before you go out to the front line. The next one is visibility versus camouflage. If you want to blend in, then you have to say goodbye to some comfort and some gear. In Ukraine, we would ditch the really reflective stuff, like a watch that could reflect the sunlight and then show a drone where we are. Or we'd have to ditch some of our favorite camouflage or even plate carriers because they're not resistant against night vision or thermal. So in a lot of instances, you're going to see people with mismatched gear, but a lot of that has a purpose of being hidden from the thermal capabilities versus the daytime capabilities. So you have to make that choice, as well as the tape. I've heard of so many different friendly fire engagements. I've almost been in one myself, which is why Ukraine wears the headbands on their helmet, on their arms, and that's almost a requirement if you're an infantryman. And the reason is so that you don't get hit by friendlies. But then again, we all know you can be way more visible on the battlefield. The Russians were wearing the orange and black armbands, but now they're wearing the red ones. So it's a gamble you have to take. At the start of the war, when we were doing recon, we would take off the armbands as soon as we could. As soon as we were out of line of sight from commanders, we'd rip that shit off and bury it into a hole. Was that the best choice? Well, we did the gamble and we said, hey, I mean, we're doing recon. We're hoping not to run into friendlies. And we think that the higher threat is being seen, being found as we're planting these mines, as we're doing reconnaissance 50 meters away from the Russians. The next one, comms versus silence. Radios are life until they're noise. In Iraq, I lived in this tunnel system, and in the middle of this tunnel system was the place that we slept, the place that we ate. It was our room, and inside our room, we had a radio, which we were prohibited from turning on and emitting our location to the drones above, trying to find our location via the radio transmissions we were giving out. So we could only receive. But one time, we had a big bombing that happened, and we wanted to go and use it from inside the room. We did that. A couple months later, they bombed directly on top of our room. Luckily, it didn't cave it in, but we believe it was because we were transmitting from our radio inside a room, and that's how they found out. And in a different instance, I did not want to emit the radio signal from there. There was another bombing, so I sent my buddy out as the team leader to go out, get radio signal, try and contact our team down below. He did that, but it was a risk we had to take. I had to tell him, hey, you might get bombed here, but we need to have some communication with our guys. Communication is super important, but it's also a direct OPSEC violation that you have to choose in war. You have to choose, do I want to be silent or do I want to turn on the comms? Rules of engagement. I think a lot of people see the footage on my channel where there's drones bombing different targets, and I get it. Like, some of this stuff is brutal. I mean, guys are on fire, guys are Yeah, you guys have seen the videos. We've all seen them. But a tale as old as time is playing out. Same thing that happened in Vietnam where people weren't able to go and shoot certain guerrilla fighters that were in plain civilian clothes is a similar thing to what we're dealing with right now. Drones used to be a job that only officers who have been through years of schooling and pilot training, those are the only people that would be launching bombs at these targets. They were trained in ROE, they were extremely proficient. But now, in modern warfare, anybody can have an FPV, anybody can have a Mavic, and actually do direct strikes on these targets. So when you find a wounded Russian who still has a rifle with him and is 10 meters away from from your friendly position, do you engage them or do you not? On these zooming digital cameras, it's really difficult to make that choice, and I think that's what people are seeing online right now. Is this not only a legal thing, but a moral thing to do? And it's a question even drone operators have. But at the end of the day, it's war. And just because it's being recorded now doesn't mean that things need to change. It is war. When you're confronting the enemy from a drone or on the ground, and it's either his life or your friends' lives, you have to make that choice. You have to make that choice. Split second. Your battery's about to run out. Are you going to hit that target or are you not? The next one is a big one. Day missions versus night operations. Night missions, even with thermal, gives you a little bit more stealth, but you're going to be a lot less mobile. Your night vision is pretty bad. You can't turn on lights, and you have to watch out for mines. You have to watch out for ambushes. You also don't want to twist your ankle. So many ways to twist your ankle out there, or fall off a bridge. I've done that before. If you do get found by that thermal drone, you're screwed. I mean, there's no way you're getting out of that. You just have to turn on your white lights and find a bill and dodge as fast as you can. Whereas if you want to do a day mission, like an infill to a position during daytime, you can wear ghillie suits or half ghillie suits and camouflage, and you can actually blend in pretty good. But the trade-off is that you can see everybody and they can see you. When I was in Chasivyar during daytime, I could see the tops of the apartments in Bakhmut. They were staring at us. I know that there was guys there with binoculars just taking a look at us, scanning the canal that I was on in front of Chasivyar. But we could be more mobile, so if they did try and strike us with an FPV, we could run inside. Also FPV threats. I mean, FPVs are just not as active at nighttime, at least for infantry. But again, I just want to mention, this is a trade-off you have to make, and it mostly has to do with infills and exfills, which are the most dangerous parts of missions. The next one, medical kit. Every soldier, when they go to the front line, have to carry an IFAK. And inside this IFAK, everybody has a different opinion about how much you want to bring. I usually brought a combat pill pack, a tourniquet, a chest seal or two with the needle D, as well as some gauze and gloves, and of course, trauma scissors and an MPA. But other people would bring in pretty much everything. They bring in IV tubes, they bring in a trachea tube, they bring in stronger painkillers, and obviously you have a medic. You have somebody who should have all this stuff on you, but for your individual self, what are you going to carry? And it seems a little nuanced, like why don't you just bring a couple other things? It doesn't weigh much, but the issue is really how bulky you want it to be on your play carrier. So I did everything in my ability, especially as a small dude, to keep it as lightweight as possible. I would keep the IFAK on my belt and then make a 550 cord sling around it so that way I could carry it on my shoulder or I could carry it on my belt. And other times I would have to go and put it on my play carrier, which can get really bulky and it gets in the way of your mobility. So it's a small thing, but I wanted to mention this. IFAKs need to be easily accessible, not only by other people, but by yourself. It's an individual first aid kit. How much gear do you want to bring in? How many tourniquets do you want to bring with you? Do you want to put one on each limb, or do you want to put one just on your ankle and your right shoulder and a couple in your backpack? These are decisions you have to make, and it's a trade-off every time. The next one is personal comfort versus combat readiness. Sleeping bag or extra mags. You have to choose. Like, you know, when you're in the military, especially if it's summertime, there's a lot of bugs going around. And obviously you want a sleeping bag, but do you also want a bivy sack? A bivy sack is another very cumbersome thing that takes up a lot of room. It's not very heavy, but it takes up a lot of room in your main pack. So that way it can block any bugs or snakes or something venomous from getting inside your sleeping bag and then biting you in your sleep, which could make you combat ineffective if you get a fever from something. And also wet wipes. For me, I wear contact lenses. I need to have personal spray. I have to have hand sanitizer, and there's a lot of personal kit that you have to have just to maintain yourself, and it's a trade-off. Everything that you take with you is another thing that you can't bring with you, or it's more weight that you have to carry to the front line that could potentially add up to a point where you're not mobile. Prepping for a mission, bringing all the food you need, all the water, all the wet wipes, and all the combat gear that you need, that's a big part of missions, is the 2-day prep beforehand. Self-preservation versus team responsibility. This is something more on the tactical level, but there's a lot of times where I had to go out in the open to go and check if our receiver's on for our drone. And maybe it's a little bit more active that night. So I remember one instance in particular, I was going out there, I was checking on the receiver, I was trying to see if it's getting any power because we had just lost connection to our drone. So I ran out there and it's nighttime. And I don't want to turn on any white lens or red lens. I'm too scared to do that, and it's a very active night. There's a lot of bombs going off. So that was a decision I had to make. I went out there and took my time with it. I stayed calm. I checked everything that I could as meticulous as possible without giving away my location. Whereas in some instances, if you're taking bombardments right there on your position, you have to get something done outside. You might want to just turn on the white lens. They already know you're there. They're already striking you. You might want to go and shout. You know, if you're on the zero line, you're shouting. It's probably for a reason. Yeah, you could be giving away your location, but it could be for the betterment of the team. And through your sacrifice, whether you get hit or not, risking yourself for your team, it could benefit everybody else. So it's a trade-off that you have to make. And the last one I want to mention is staying human versus going cold. This is a very deep one, but gotta mention it. You know, and pretty much every war that I've been in, I've seen people change. They go from the funny guy who has a lot of morale And then the next month, after a month of hard work, a month of dodging drones, they become somebody different. And for the last couple months that they're in our unit, they are just somebody different. They are not fitting in. War hardens you very fast. You have to shut off emotions to survive. But if you shut off too much, you're gonna lose yourself. If you're on the front line, you're living in tension all the time. So for myself, I would have to make 2 different types of myself. I would have to make Civ Div 1 and Civ Div 2. Civ Div 2 was the work one. That was the guy who was just all about the mission. And Civ Div 1 is the guy who has the humor. I'm joking around and being myself. And there's a time and place for each one of those. If you're getting bombarded, Civ Div 1 is a pretty good way to go. Just laugh it off, make sure your team is enjoying themselves as best they can, and just making sure you're not getting into your head too much. And then when the war is really kicking off, you have to become a little bit more cold, and you have to do the killing. You have to really hunt these people down, just get into this vicious rage in order to get the job done sometimes. And then you have to shut it off a minute later. You can be on the front line killing people, and then 2 hours later you can be back in the rear at a hotel eating a hot dog, chilling out, just enjoying your day. And you have to be able to turn off that vicious soldier part of yourself when you're back in the rear, and then turn it on when you're on the front. So anyway, I hope that makes sense, guys. I just wanted to discuss some of the trade-offs you make in war, and yeah, I hope you guys learned something. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.